Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going to be taking a look at a topic that you guys requested, self-discipline and success, as explored in Brian Tracy's No Excuses. Um, it's one thing to want to be successful, but how do we bridge the gap between wanting and actually doing?
Right. Yeah.
And that's where I think Tracy's insights come in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he really dives into the psychology behind why we make excuses. He uses this great analogy
Okay.
of someday Isle. It's a place where all these people are hanging out and they're trading excuses for why they haven't achieved their goals, which I think we've all spent some time on someday Isle.
Oh, totally. I've got like a timeshare there practically. But I think what's interesting is that he says even wildly successful people have faced the same excuses we all have.
Yeah.
So it's not really about the excuses themselves, but it's how we choose to deal with them.
Exactly. And, he calls this the expediency factor.
Yeah.
This is our natural human instinct to choose the easiest path, even if it doesn't lead us where we really want to go.
Mm.
And excuses offer that quick and easy way out. They let us avoid the discomfort of effort and potential failure.
Right. So if we're constantly taking the easy way out, how do we break free from that pattern? And Tracy seems to suggest that self-discipline is the key.
He does, and he defines it as more than just willpower.
Yeah.
He talks about it as self-mastery, self-control,
Huh.
even delayed gratification,
Right.
being able to make choices that are aligned with our long-term goals, even when those choices aren't the most fun or appealing in the moment.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually cultivate that kind of self-discipline? It's easy to say just do it, but it's a lot harder to put it into practice.
Right, and that's where this idea of paying the price of success in full and in advance comes in.
Yeah.
And he's not saying that we should suffer for success, but rather that we need to be willing to put in the work, make the sacrifices, and invest in ourselves before we see those big rewards.
And he even gives an example of a dentist who attends a conference in Hong Kong to learn a cutting-edge technique. This dentist had to invest time, money, and effort up front, but it led to his early retirement and financial freedom.
Yeah, that story really highlights how investing in our knowledge and skills is a form of paying the price. And,
Yeah.
this goes back to what we were saying earlier about the importance of always learning. In today's world, things are moving so quickly. The skills we have today could be totally obsolete tomorrow, so we need to always be learning and adapting to stay ahead.
So it's not just working hard, it's working smart and making sure we're constantly learning and expanding our skill set. Which kind of leads us to the next big point that he makes, which is the power of goal setting. He throws out this stat: only 3% of adults write down their goals, but that 3% achieves significantly more than the other 97%. What's going on there?
Right. Well, it's not just about writing them down to write them down. There's actually a science behind this.
Okay.
He explains that the physical act of writing engages something called psychoneuromotor activity.
Okay, that sounds a little intimidating. What exactly is that, and why does it matter?
Well, it's pretty simple, actually. When we write something down, it forces our brains to process the information more deeply.
Okay.
It helps us solidify the goal in our minds, increases the likelihood that we're going to take action.
So it's like sending a stronger signal to our bones, making it more real and achievable. But he doesn't stop there, right? He gives a whole process for setting and achieving goals.
Right, and it's a really practical and actionable process.
Yeah.
He breaks it down into smaller steps, emphasizes daily action, and building momentum through consistent effort.
And this is where I think his emphasis on personal excellence comes in.
Right,
It's this idea that excellence isn't something we just achieve overnight.
right.
It's a habit that we build through small, consistent actions.
Exactly. And, he even provides a compelling statistic that highlights this commitment to growth. He says that the top 20% of people in most fields increase their income by 10 to 25% every single year compounded.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, it's like compound interest for your career.
Right, exactly.
So we've got the foundation, self-discipline, clear goals, continuous learning. But, I imagine there's times when fear creeps in, even when we're doing all the right things. How does Tracy address that fear?
Well, he talks about the importance of courage, and it's not so much the absence of fear, but the mastery of fear. He suggests that we should embrace this fake it till you make it principle. Act as if we're already courageous, even if we don't feel that way initially.
Interesting. I like that idea. It reminds me of the 100-call method that he recommends for salespeople to break out of a slump.
Mm,
Is that kind of connected to that idea?
absolutely. The 100-Paul method is all about taking massive action to overcome fear and build momentum.
Yeah.
By making 100 sales calls as quickly as possible, regardless of the outcome,
Wow.
you're pushing past that fear of rejection and you're building confidence through action.
Okay, it sounds counterintuitive, but I can see how the sheer volume of action could help shift your mindset.
That's exactly. He's tapping into the law of reversibility. Our actions influence our feelings just as much as our feelings influence our actions.
Interesting. So, by acting courageously, even when we don't feel courageous, we can actually start to shift our internal state. So,
Exactly.
it's like a positive feedback loop. Action breeds confidence, and confidence breeds more action, and so on.
Right.
But even with courage, there are going to be times when we face setbacks. How does Tracy suggest we handle those inevitable bumps in the road?
He stresses persistence, that unwavering commitment to keep going even when things get tough. Winners never quit and quitters never win.
Right.
He also emphasizes that setbacks are inevitable and they offer valuable learning opportunities.
So it's about reframing those challenges as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. He's got this great quote: persistence is to the character of man as carbon is to steel.
Right, and he also talks about courageous patience,
Hmm.
which resonates with me. It's that grit to keep going, to trust the process even when you're not seeing the results right away.
So it's about taking ownership and focusing on solutions rather than dwelling on the problem. And it sounds like this ties back into that long time perspective he mentioned earlier, that ability to delay gratification and stay focused on the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And this mindset shift is so important, not just for achieving our personal goals, but also for navigating the complexities of work life.
That's actually a great segue because I was thinking about that all these principles, self-discipline, goal setting, persistence, they all have such a huge impact on our success at work, don't
Oh, they absolutely do. In fact, Tracy spends a good chunk of No Excuses
they?
exploring how these principles can apply to the workplace to boost productivity, enhance leadership skills, and ultimately achieve greater career success.
And that's where we're headed next, right? To the workplace.
That's right. We're going to explore how Tracy's principles of self-discipline can be used to enhance focus, boost productivity, and ultimately lead to greater career fulfillment.
All right, well, let's dive into that.
That sounds good.
All right, so we're back and ready to apply all this stuff to our work lives, right? I mean, in this age of constant distractions, it's so hard to stay focused and productive.
Oh, yeah, you're telling. And Tracy really doesn't sugarcoat it. He points out that the average employee is wasting a ton of time at work,
Okay.
like a scary amount.
Mm.
He cites these studies that say it could be as much as like
Well,
50%.
50%.
Yeah, 50%. Think about all that idle chatter, the personal errands, the internet browsing that we all do.
Wow, that is a lot. So, what's the antidote to all this wasted time? Is it just cracking the whip and forcing ourselves to work harder?
Not really. He's not just talking about working hard, it's working smart.
Right.
It's about separating the relevant from the irrelevant and reminding ourselves that 80% of our results come from just 20% of our efforts.
Oh, yeah, the Pareto principle.
Exactly.
I've heard of that. Can you remind me what that is?
Yeah, so it's basically this idea that a small number of things are responsible for a large majority of the effects.
Okay.
So in this case, it means that a few key tasks are driving most of our results.
Okay, so how do we figure out what those are? Like those important 20% tasks? Does he give us any guidance on that?
He does. He talks about ruthlessly eliminating distractions and
Yeah.
resisting the urge to multitask.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that.
Yeah, it's hard. We all struggle with that.
Yeah.
It's all about being intentional with our time, focusing on those activities that really move the needle.
Okay, so more mindful, deliberate with our work, but let's be real, distractions are everywhere these days. How do
Yeah.
we actually block them out?
So he has a few practical suggestions. He talks about setting up a dedicated workspace, setting clear boundaries with coworkers,
Right.
and even using technology to our advantage. So, turning off notifications, using those website blockers, even scheduling specific times for email.
Oh, okay, those are some good ones. You know what strikes me about all this is that it's not just individual productivity.
Right.
He also talks about the importance of building a strong professional reputation, right?
He does. He makes this really direct connection between self-discipline and reputation.
Hmm.
When we're consistently producing high-quality work, meeting deadlines, exceeding expectations, and we establish ourselves as reliable, trustworthy.
It's about showing up and proving our value. And he talks about this go-to guy phenomenon,
Yeah.
the person in every office who gets all the best
Right,
projects.
right.
What's their secret?
Well, Tracy says it comes down to being dependable, efficient, and always willing to go the extra mile.
Yeah.
They've really proven themselves to be a valuable asset, and that makes them highly sought after.
So it's not just talent or skills, but these qualities of reliability initiative.
Absolutely.
And I imagine that becomes even more important as we move into leadership roles.
It does.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that self-discipline is non-negotiable for effective leadership.
Okay.
Qualities like self-control, responsibility, decisiveness.
Okay.
These are all essential for guiding and inspiring others.
So walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. Leaders need to embody those qualities if they want to earn respect and trust from their teams.
That makes sense. It's about having that long-term perspective, staying focused on the big picture, and having the grit to persevere even when you face setbacks.
Yeah.
Didn't he talk about courageous patience?
Yes. That's key for leaders, especially today. Things are moving so fast.
Yeah.
It's about weathering those storms, staying positive, inspiring others to do the same.
Speaking of the business world, he also talks about how these principles apply to like entrepreneurship and sales, right?
Yeah, he does. And he's super clear that self-discipline is crucial for navigating the ups and downs of starting and running a business.
Okay. What are some of the key areas he talks about there?
Well, he starts by reminding us that businesses exist to create and keep customers.
Right.
Everything we do should be geared toward that goal. He emphasizes exceeding customer expectations, delivering exceptional value,
Okay.
building those strong, lasting relationships.
Sounds like a good recipe for success in any field.
Yeah, it is. And, he also talks about referrals,
Right.
word-of-mouth marketing.
Oh, yeah. Referrals are gold, especially for small businesses.
Right. But they don't just happen by accident.
No.
He says that they come from consistently delivering outstanding value, going above and beyond,
Mm-hmm.
building that reputation for excellence.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to self-discipline.
Right. So it's not just closing the deal, it's creating a positive experience that goes above and beyond. But even with the best intentions, businesses can get stuck in a rut.
Right.
How does Tracy say we can get unstuck?
Well, he talks about continuous improvement.
Okay.
He uses this acronym, CANI.
What's that?
It stands for continuous and never-ending improvement.
Got it.
It's about always striving to get better no matter how good we already are.
It's easy to get complacent, though.
Oh, yeah, especially when things are going well.
Right.
But that continuous improvement takes a lot of discipline.
It does. So it's
Yeah.
about making learning and growth a priority, even when things get crazy. Okay. And of course, no discussion of business would be complete without talking about sales. I imagine he has a lot to say about that.
Oh, he does. He has this really direct approach to it.
Okay.
He says nothing happens until someone buys something.
He's not wrong. Sales are the lifeblood.
Absolutely.
But it's such a tough field.
Oh, it is.
Full of rejection and setbacks.
So much rejection.
How do we deal with that?
He says we have to develop a thick skin, handle rejection without letting it get us down.
Mm-hmm.
He reminds us that persistence is key. Stay focused on our goals.
So that warrior mentality again.
Exactly. And he also talks about the importance of building rapport. Really listening to the customer's needs and tailoring our approach to fit them. It's about relationships, not just pushing products.
Okay. Authenticity, genuine connection.
Exactly. People can spot a fake from a mile away.
Yeah. So what about when you're in a slump? What are some specific techniques he recommends?
Well, remember the 100 call method?
Yeah.
He says we can use that same principle to break out of a sales rut.
So like instead of dwelling on the problem, you just hit the phones.
Exactly. It's taking massive action to create some momentum.
Okay.
Even if you don't close every sale, you're building confidence, sharpening your skills, identifying new opportunities.
So win-win, even if it doesn't lead to immediate sales.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about when we're just like totally burned out and overwhelmed? How do we like recharge and stay motivated?
That's such a good question, and he actually addresses that directly in No Excuses.
Okay.
He has a whole chapter on maintaining our well-being, recognizing that we can't perform at our best if we're running on fumes.
And that sounds like a great lead-in to the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Because we've covered a lot of ground, but I'm really interested to hear what he says about taking care of ourselves in the midst of all of this.
Yeah, let's explore that next time. We'll
Right.
delve into his insights on maintaining well-being, managing stress, and creating a more balanced life.
Sounds good. Okay, so welcome back to our final part of this deep dive on Brian Tracy's No Excuses. So far, we've explored how self-discipline can help us achieve goals, overcome challenges at work, and even build thriving businesses. But, it's not all about pushing ourselves to the limit all the time, right?
Right.
Tracy also talks about the importance of taking care of ourselves.
He does. Yeah, he dedicates a whole chapter to the importance of maintaining physical and mental well-being. Because, you can't really perform at your best if you're running on empty.
It's true. So it's not about self-discipline at the expense of well-being, but using it to create a more balanced and fulfilling life. What are some of the key areas he talks about?
Well, he starts by emphasizing the importance of our physical health.
Okay.
He really highlights that connection between our physical state and our mental state.
Yeah,
When we feel good physically, we're more productive, energetic, and resilient.
that makes total sense.
Huh.
It's hard to be motivated and disciplined when you're feeling exhausted and run down. What are some of the things he recommends for physical health?
The basics, getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet, and exercising regularly.
Okay.
He even says that these three things are like non-negotiable
Really?
for anyone who wants to perform at their best.
And it's interesting because those are often the first things to go when we're stressed or overwhelmed.
Right.
We think we can just power through, but really we're just making it worse.
Yeah, he actually says that neglecting our physical health is a form of self-sabotage.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
like trying to run a marathon with no training or fuel. You're
Yeah.
not going to get very far.
That's a great analogy. So how do we
Yeah.
apply self-discipline in these areas? Is it about setting like a rigid schedule and forcing ourselves to stick to it?
You know, not necessarily.
Yeah.
He encourages us to think about it in terms of creating healthy habits.
Okay.
Rather than like imposing strict rules, find ways to incorporate these activities into our lives in a sustainable way.
Right. It's about finding what works for you and making it part of your routine.
Exactly. And he even suggests using some of the same principles we've already talked about,
Oh.
like setting clear goals, breaking them down into smaller steps, tracking our progress
Yeah.
to make these healthy habits stick.
That's a good reminder that these principles apply to all areas of our lives,
Yeah.
not just our work. But what about the mental side of things? How do we cultivate mental well-being?
Well, he talks about managing stress effectively. Stress is a huge drain on our energy and focus.
It really is.
And he offers some techniques like deep breathing exercises,
Yeah.
meditation, spending time in nature.
Those are all great, but sometimes it feels like stress is just inevitable.
It can feel that way.
So how do we use self-discipline to not just manage stress, but also create a more positive mindset?
He emphasizes the importance of positive self-talk and affirmations.
Okay.
Challenge those negative thoughts and replace them with more empowering beliefs.
Okay, I have to admit affirmations can sound a little cheesy,
They can,
but I have heard they can be really effective.
if you do them consistently. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about consciously choosing to focus on the positive. You're kind of rewiring your brain to think more constructively.
Right, so it's not about denying the challenges, but choosing how we respond to them.
Exactly. And he also talks about gratitude.
Okay.
He suggests that we take time each day to appreciate the good things in our lives, even the small things.
That's a great point. It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to appreciate the simple things.
It is, and that's where self-discipline comes in again.
Right.
It's about making a conscious effort to cultivate those feelings of gratitude, even when we're feeling stressed.
Yeah, so it's about being intentional with our thoughts, our emotions, our energy, creating that internal environment that supports our well-being.
Exactly, because ultimately that's what it's all about, right? Self-discipline is not about deprivation or punishment. It's about empowering ourselves to create the lives we want.
Right. It's about taking control of our choices,
Yeah.
our habits, our mindset.
Exactly, and using that to build a life that is successful but also fulfilling and joyful.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive on Brian Tracy's No Excuses, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that self-discipline is not about being perfect.
Okay.
It's about making a conscious choice each day to align our actions with our goals and our values. It's about showing up for ourselves even when it's hard. And, most importantly, it's recognizing that we all have that power within us to create positive change.
One disciplined choice at a time.
Exactly.
Well said. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us on this deep dive on No Excuses. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and maybe even a little bit challenging. Remember that the journey of self-discipline begins with a single step, and every step you take brings you closer to the life you want to live. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for that best version of yourself.